You're listening to the Go Get Them Show. This is a discussion that inspires entrepreneurs to pursue their passion to create meaningful, impactful, and sustainable companies in Asia, Africa, and LATAM. This is your host, Maxon T, together with my co-hosts, Arun Krishnakumar and Sheila Mburu. We sit down with entrepreneurs, operators, and investors across frontier markets to discover their experiences, lessons learned, and how they made an impact.
But even though you will have access with financial services, you might not understand it. And it means, let's say, for example, you have bank account, but it's just there.
Yeah, so a big thing for us is being responsible in two manners, right? The first is being responsible as a...
Cool. You're listening to the Go Get Them Show. For this episode, we have Archie Anugrah, the head of CEO office at PayFazz, and a founder of Founder Shaper and previously a management consultant. For those who don't know PayFazz is one of the fastest growing Indonesian company, and they just recently closed their Series B. Well, when I say recently, it means last year. They have raised about 74 million and are trying to promote financial inclusion for unbanked residents in rural Indonesia. Welcome to the show, Archie.
Hi, Max. Hi, everyone.
Cool.
Good to be here.
So, love it. Archie, first question. For all our listeners, and for Arun, is about a few thousand miles away from us, how is Indonesia and why is Indonesia
exciting?
If you see
Indonesia, one thing will come in mind is that population, right? We have around 270 million people in Indonesia. So now I will be very, specific, especially in terms of finance. I'm coming from fintech side, right? Especially in financial services. If you see Indonesia with its 270 million people, there are two parameters that we need to look. One is about financial inclusion. Number two is about financial literacy. Inclusion, if I'm not mistaken, around like 50%, 60%, really depend on which report that we are looking for. But literacy is only around 38% last time I checked. Now, those two are interlinked together, but we can slice and dice it into several, into different way to see it. First, when we see about inclusion, it means you use financial service, right? Let's use one of the report number, 60% inclusion. It means 40% of people in Indonesia, they don't have access for financial services, like literally don't have access. But even though you will have access with financial services, you might not understand it. And it means, let's say, for example, you have bank account, but it's just there, right? You don't use it. You don't know how to use it. You still go to other person for using it. So there goes the second dimension, which is the financial literacy, which is only 38%. It means 60% of people don't know, what kind of financial product that they could use, how to use it. So it's like a huge, I would say, opportunity for fintech players like us, because we can tap like 40 and 60% as 40% for 300 million. It means 120 million at the very least can be tapped. But it's really tough because we are tapping segments that's unreachable with, especially with digital market, and that's why we are trying agent model with PayFazz. I think exciting on one side, a lot of opportunity to be tapped, and I think more importantly, a lot of impact that could be made in the societies. That's, I think, the most important thing. We see it in other markets as well, that, when financial inclusion, financial literacy is happening, actually people's welfare also increase significantly. And as Indonesian ourselves is also, we are a businessman, but we are also having this kind of social impact or social impact target for ourselves, and that's why we built this company in the first place.
Love it. I love the story. Arun?
Yeah, I just had a quick question, Archie, if I may. From my experiences within networking within the development finance community, one of the things I've learned, and it's been the last 12 months, is that if you pick Asia, apart from India and China, which is kind of starting to mature now and not probably more saturated at this point, Indonesia seems to be the hot spot for deal making and deal makers at all tiers, right from early stage to growth stage post Series B as well. So and lots of these development finance capital I can see are targeting Indonesia, which is amazing news for the country. Now, drilling down further a little bit from the Indonesian level, you were the first company in Indonesia to join or to be chosen by Y-Combinator, right? And you've been on the top 100 list for a long time. And if you looked at your growth story from there, it's like you've got 10 million monthly active users, 250,000 agents. Of course, you mentioned about the phygital model. How did this all happen? Because I'm really keen to understand how you got into YC. What really was the driving factor there, so that others, our audience listening into this, can actually take something from this conversation.
Yeah, sure. I think before going there, I think it might be useful for me to share what PayFazz is doing in Indonesia. So PayFazz is being built by one thesis that we want to tap the unbankable and also the so-called the illiterate financially people, right? So there are two ways so far in doing business. One is direct way, and number two is indirect way. So a lot of players are coming in direct way, in a sense that they are coming to your application, your handphone. You install the application, you use it directly. Basically, it's a B2C model. For us, we are actually B2B, or maybe if you want to call it like B2B2C model, where our users are actually MSMEs, Kirana stores. We call it like warung here, mom and pop store, you name it, like those MSMEs people. Those are actually our customers. Those MSMEs install our application because they want to resell digital products, for example, telco, bill, financial products in their shop or markets. Now, because of the way it's being situated, or maybe even culture, right? People come to those MSMEs with the cash, and they have this huge trust with those people. And for example, if someone want to buy telco, they go to those warung or mom and pop shop and say, "Hey, I want to buy 50,000. This is the cash." And then the warung and the mom and pop shop need to buy from somewhere else, right? And that's where PayFazz coming in. So we to help Indonesia's financial literacy and financial inclusion through the help of these MSMEs. Now, it actually has like a lot of bottleneck or hurdles, because you need to onboard with a lot of MSMEs, a lot of transaction with this. We call it like agent and end users. So end users coming to agent.
Mhm.
The interaction with agent and end users are mostly offline, and a lot of different taste of UI UX, and also different type of knowledge especially for digital players. So when we see a lot of players in Indonesia coming to the direct model to the users, we choose the indirect model to B2B model using our agents. It turns out to be a very good decision, and even though it's really tough onboarding those people, because at the very beginning, people are asking, like, why I should join PayFazz at the first place? I have my shop, all good. Why I should bother? But education is the key, and we do it consistently over the years. Now people actually it's the other way around. Like, why are you not using PayFazz, right? Because you can procure all of these services and digital products really easily. Now going back to your question about how can we go there, it's because we can crack this market. A lot of players are trying to crack this market. Not as much as the direct market, but quite a few. I think there are a lot. Some of players coming from region also coming here, but we are, I think, one. I wouldn't say the first one, but we are one of the players who can crack it scalably. And that's actually what makes us different. For example, our early growth traction coming from online, and it's like massive. And we can do for some reason we can activate some of a lot of online customers, not even from offline side. And those kind of scalability, those kind of huge user bases are actually what makes Y-Combinator think that we are attractive and we are interesting. And not to mention that with the literacy and inclusion index like Indonesia, like a lot of major players and even unicorns are trying to tackle the 40%, 30% market. There's a huge room to grow in the 60% and 70% market, and that's where PayFazz coming in, right? And that's why we are pretty interesting in that sense, from YC perspective.
That's absolutely. Yeah, that's absolutely interesting. And I'd really love to learn more about the agent model, right? From what I understand is that the agents, they get paid and they get to sell digital products. So it's like a new source for them. And then those people who, like you said, the 70% who are currently unbanked, they now get to bank because they now get to access of all this. So my question for you is, why do you go for the initial agent model other than the big size? And the key hurdles, what I'm trying to understand is the interactions. You mentioned about education, right? I'd like to know, like, what is that like, right? Because when you go down to speak to a mom and pop, especially at the beginning, what is it like? What are the things that we're pushing back on, and how do you overcome that?
Sure. So I think in theoretical landscape, right, it is unique. It's as simple as that. But when we go to implementation, there are a lot of things going on, right? Especially not trying to, I'm trying to choose right words here. Maybe like if we go to rural areas where our customers are in, mostly our customers are in rural or slum areas. Mostly people are tightly knit, and like mostly people, I mean, in terms of education, and of course financial literacy is one thing, but even in terms of education, the mom and pop stores owner, it might not be as high. So if you go with a normal digital way, like for example, hey auntie, let's say, hey auntie, why don't you just install this application in your phone? It will make your life easier. Then the auntie will think that, why bother, right? I mean, people are coming to me anyway. Why should I use my handphone? I don't know, even maybe actually a lot of people, like, I don't know how to use my phone at the first place. I know how to use WhatsApp though, right? And that's why people are coming to the offline side and trying to pour in money and budget on the offline side, right? But it is tricky, because when we go to this huge segment, especially Indonesia is like split, is archipelago country split by oceans. You cannot deploy to your sales team to every single provinces in Indonesia until you are big enough, right? And we try to crack it actually in the online space. Like we build communities, we target, like, of course at the beginning we target people with enough like technology savviness, but after that we build communities. People see that this is actually something that's good for the communities. People spread it, like word of mouth, and then the communities are growing, and then now people want to use, and they are asking like how to do that. So we need sales team. Then later, actually maybe like 1 year, and maybe nearly 2 years after the conception, then the sales team is being built. Only by then, because a lot of people really need guidance in offline segment or offline space, and only by then we really go to offline acquisition. So like, and then only by then like we are really like looking at the market that like those and then try to tap the market where like for people, like for example, the auntie cannot use handphone. Then we might teach them later, but at the very beginning we really tap into the communities itself and try to expand from there.
Yeah, community is an important one.
So Archie, I would like to double click on something that you mentioned, which is the 30-70 ratio of your customer segment, right? So and unicorns really focusing on the 30%, where the actual opportunity is with the 70% for digital and financial inclusion. And I'm a villager. I've lived in my village for the first 20 years of my life. I know a thing or two about behaviors there, which are different to the urban behaviors. The question I have for you is, when you targeted a rural customer, what was the one thing that you had to keep in mind that you typically wouldn't really consider about urban population when you went to market. So what was the customization or bespoke go-to-market strategy that you had to think about in going for the rural customer? And how is that different in Indonesia, or is it even different in Indonesia to, say, other parts of Asia, like India
I think
or
it's
China?
hard for me to speak on behalf of the other part of the world, but for what we learn in Indonesia
Sure.
is that it need to be very simple. So if you see, even in our application, it's only bahasa. So you might think that, okay, bahasa, English, it's just like one click away, right? No big deal. But the thing is that bahasa only gives that, I mean, this is one of the simple example, right? It gives like perception that actually it is simple. And then not to mention about it, the language, we also try to simplify it like into some sort of like simpler slang words rather than the formal words, right? Just to make sure that it is actually resonant with the target market that we are in. The UX is also a bit different. I think I hear some feedbacks from some of my friends like, hey, the UX is actually a bit cluttered, a bit messy here and there. But that's actually apparently what works. Like people want to see all of the functionality in one go. Like, hey, I have all of this functionality. It's a bit different, like with a sleek UI UX where it need to be in this page B, page C, section A, section B, section C. These people are like, okay, simple. So what are the functionalities? Let me know. So it need to be in one page. Everything is there. You click it. A bit cluttered, a bit messy, but that's actually what resonates with people, right? I think those are, I think, the two simplest example that even if you open our apps, definitely you will see it at the first time.
I find that really interesting. I had prior experience of dealing with some rural communities as well, and that is exactly what it is. You have to bring this all the features out at first go. They need to understand. They need to trust it at just that. Cool. So moving on to my next question. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'd like to dive in a little bit about the recent transaction that happens in XFers and PayFazz, and I just found out about it yesterday, and I'm a little bit excited about it. So on the outset of thing, it seems like PayFazz is going to use XFers payment application and expand that in Indonesia. So can you tell us a little bit more about the transaction, whatever that you're happy to share, of course, and would love to hear more about what's going on next as well. I know about the single integration and no integration route that you guys are taking, so we'd love to hear more about it from you.
So we've been known each other for quite some time. XFers is also part of Y-Combinator. I mean, they are like super big in Singapore. We are big in Indonesia. But I think one space that is really interesting for us to see is that XFers is really strong in the infrastructure side, while we from PayFazz, we are strong, knowing our customer, especially on the rural side, but our user base is huge. But on the other side, I think if you have strong user base, you need a strong infrastructure. You have strong infrastructure, you need strong user base, right? So those kind of complementary, it's really like just like really fit in. And I think from our side, I think that's coming from the theoretical perspective, right? Sounds makes sense, but I think people also really matter. We know each other for quite some time. Both of us are Y-Combinator alumni, and we've been working quite some time as well before the investment happened. So with all of those considerations, we believe that this synergy, the infrastructure and user base, is definitely the right way to go. Moving forward, I think with the like I would call it like with the steroid, where on the technology and infrastructure side, we believe that we could reach out more people. If even in Indonesia alone, right, we have like 10 million end users, the one that come to the agent. Without mentioning about the transaction volume and GTV, those 10 million people are coming like on maybe like daily basis to our agents. It's a huge amount of transaction happening, and definitely we need to ramp it up to more and more users. And infrastructure play is definitely the right way, the right steroid for us.
Thanks for that, Archie. Again, double clicking into that point, perhaps a logical question to ask is, what is next for PayFazz? What are you really excited about, and what are you looking forward to? You've just raised a major milestone in terms of Series B funding from Tiger and some seriously big investors. So you're not you're not short of capital. You've got a really good runway. So what are you kind of going for? Are you going for
Maybe
Asia?
no. Maybe for now, Indonesia and Singapore, maybe that's it for now. Let's see how it goes for the next one. I believe agent model is definitely not working in Singapore side. Right? It's definitely more to like Indonesia side of things. But for time being, we are going to double down on Indonesia side, especially on the agent. Not to mention features. I think people often undermine features. So usually people see it as like, customer. But if you think about it, customers are going to come because you have a strong feature, right? And strong feature needs a strong infrastructure. And this basically this particular feature is definitely the things to go moving forward. And it's something that might be not as showy as building your app, but that's definitely something's really important. So I think one of the example that just being published in the newspaper recently is that we built a facility for online kirana store, online warung, for them to digitize the transaction. Those are like one of the features that might be like seems like a small stuff, but there are a lot of thinking behind it and a lot of tech playing behind it, right? And definitely a lot more use cases can be explored and can be built moving forward.
Cool stuff. And I actually would argue that you have the physical infrastructure working with the agent and the end user, because traditionally you can never reach them. But now with PayFazz, you do have that infrastructure. So by partnering with another team, which is I would say, online infrastructure for payment, that makes absolute sense. It's really exciting. Talking about combination and I would say financing, I think Arun spoke to you about blended finance. We'd love to hear a little bit about your thoughts around this as well, because we obviously been trying to say that there are a lot of experiments, especially in the Western world, that try to blend debt with equity and trying to push for growth in a more sustainable way, in a way. At least that's what they're preaching. So we'd love to hear your thoughts about blended finance. What is it for you? Well, is it something that PayFazz would consider? Is it something that that the region could really benefit from? I'm from Malaysia, so we'd love to hear your thoughts.
So maybe the way I see it is that I think if we are speaking about traditional fundraising round, mostly people always speak about equity round, like 100% equity round, and it's normally so, right? Now, I think I see some of the players coming in blended finance, even like pure debt financing. I would say the industry is, I know it's like pretty old industry, like it's been like around for quite some time. Actually, even before equity, debt was coming first. But for fundraising side, I see that it's still like undermined. Like still like a few players coming in this segment. I think I see one is like pure debt, but two convertible bonds, right? Going to be converted in another round, and so on and so forth, right? I think a lot more players are coming to this direction, but my note is that I don't know whether because we are new in this area or it's just particularly so in Southeast Asia, but I feel that the players are still quite a few. And mostly like 90% and even more players that we been in touch with are like always been like equity. So I think that's the first driver, right? Like the players. If you have more players, then you will have more, like just like spec, right? Spec recently like getting hype for whatever reason, right? Now the market is bullish again, but spec trend is still there. Sometimes it's just trend, and if the players are only a few, how come you build that trends, right? Number two, I think also the
Yeah.
way operator like us are being educated. Like it's normally traditionally it's all about equity, but if you think about it, the financing definitely makes sense. Depend on the model, of course. Yeah, I think those are the two areas, like the knowledge part, and also the like the way that I feel that the players are still pretty few, and it's really hard, like to make it like a trendsetter if there are only like few players. Of course, the alternative is going to bank, but I know it's not blended financing in that sense, because with bank, then we are talking about cash flow, right? And it's not really fit to startup.
Yeah.
Sure.
So that's definitely out of scope.
Sure. I had to just say one thing there when we talk about blended finance, right? I think the stage at where you are as an organization, Archie, I think debt and equity, of course, both make sense. But it's very important for startups, particularly tech startups, to also understand the benefits of the grant aspect of it. So there is grants can actually start kicking in at a much earlier
Mm.
stage, 3-4 years to where you are today. I mean, like much earlier. And there are so many opportunities out there. There are pros and cons to going down the grant way as well, because grants often do not align with you
Mm.
in terms of your roadmap. Sometimes it can be seen as a distraction. So it is all about understanding the different um, financing options we have on the table, especially
Mm.
as an impact organization. I think it's important that technology firms focused on impact
Mm.
really tap into blended finance, and it is in the interest of the founders to look into it. And I personally am keen, primarily because I feel this is a missed opportunity. I feel the VCs have done amazingly well in marketing themselves to technology startups. That at this point, at least, the world thinks the only way to grow and have financing is equity, and that's quite not the case. And that is perhaps the word that needs to be spread around. But yeah, so
Yeah,
I'll pause
definitely,
there.
Arun. I
Max,
think
over
I
to
think
you.
that's the case. I think from operator side, right? I think it is as simple as this, right? Like, hey, I need this. For example, right? I need this amount of money, for example, for whatever reason, let's say. Then I will ask someone, right? Someone more senior than me, who can guide me, right? How can I do that? Then most likely the answer will be equity financing, right? The until in one point of time that when someone asks like, hey, you have two options actually, equity financing, you will get this with some percentage of equity, and it's actually pretty easy if once you are being operator for quite some time, especially if you are VC, with this amount of money, with this amount of traction, how many percentage give and take, actually people can guesstimate it in a sense. But when it goes to blended finance, pretty few people can really guesstimate it, right? And for founder side, for the management side, it's as simple as I have option A, what's the pro and cons, option B, pro and cons, whatever the reason, whatever the processes, what is the pro and cons. That's actually the first things that comes in mind, right? And that's why I feel that those evangelist side, those people who really promote and really have this knowledge and can translate it into guesstimate to the founders, are really important. If you guys want to take this to be a trendsetter for the next thing to come.
Absolutely. I agree. I think it comes back to the initial thing that we're working with different communities. Every time you bring something new, there's always a need for education. There's always a need to be able to
Yeah.
show that it actually can add value. Without doing that, it's just
Yeah,
it's marketing 101,
I
I
think
suppose.
people are thinking
Um,
like can or cannot, and then if it is, what is the cost? That's simple, right? But if you give me like,
yeah,
hey, this is the scheme, or and then all of those complicated scheme, then it defeats the purpose, right? I think people who can simplify it into that two sentences, I think that's gonna be the important type of players in the industry to make sure that this blended finance coming into fruition and becoming a trend.
absolutely.
Mm.
Simplicity and education. That's the biggest takeaway I have today. Cool. So now that we talk a little bit about PayFazz, I wanted to jump a little bit more about you. You recently started something about founder Founder Shaper. I would love to learn more about that. What is that about? And how are you seeing that and in helping whatever you do
I see,
or whatever
got it.
you're trying to achieve?
So I mean, I'm coming from, I'm not coming from the capital city. I'm coming from this, second tier city around Jakarta myself, and also the same with our founders. We feel that we are blessed with our position right now, with the things that we achieve and until now. And especially so, I think in this segment, in the tech startup, the education, I mean, there are a lot of education materials, YouTube, you name it, books and everything. But a lot of the core information are coming from oral tradition, like verbal. Still like, hey, this is the way you do things. Usually this is the way, right? You need like mentors, you need like people who can teach you verbally. Well, of course, ideally like one-on-one. Now, I think it's more or less better in the professional side of things in Indonesia. But the way I think about it, if I were to see it back then, like 10 years ago, I'm still in university. I don't know anything about about this field, let alone about fundraising, right? What I know is that if I come to investor, they will give me money for whatever reason, then I will be happy. That's it, right? But the truth is, it's not that simple. A lot of things going on. How to go hack your product, how to have even the founder mentality, how even what is actually fundraising is all about, right? A lot of things going on. So I'm thinking in that regard, like, hey, can we give education to these students instead of, I know there are a lot of problem in the professional side as well, a lot of education to be made, but how about the students? Because the students are in the prime era for experimentation. It's like zero cost. You can collect a lot of other students, try to do things and experiment with the right set of knowledge. So it's actually the perfect time to try your stuff, right? But you don't have the knowledge, you don't have the network. So how? No option, right? So that's why I try to make this NGO. It's actually non-profit. It's an NGO, student-driven organization, where I believe that if we give education to the students, they can be a founder someday. And that's actually, I think in simple word, in layman term, I think it is Founder Institute for Students. That's basically it, right? Founder Institute is for professional hire right now. I'm trying to create another NGO, Founder Institute for Students, and that's what Founder Shaper is. And that's why I keep it as NGO, non-profit, because it's for impact making. Definitely, let's say, for example, Arun coming and, see maybe like students still learning. Definitely the business plan is not as robust as you would expect, right? But they are the future of the country. They are the future of the world. So in a sense, I feel that's my calling. And, however much I want to make sure that a lot more founders coming from the student segment.
Hats off to that initiative, Archie. I think we should definitely talk about that in more detail at some point. Would love to see if we can collaborate in any ways with some of your founders in that organization. So yeah, very keen to help you there.
Cool. And with that, I want to say I really love the thing that you said. I resonate with them because I wanted to start a company when I was in university, and I know nobody. I'm nobody, and I started it and it failed. But hey, you gotta try. But I think I would have benefited a lot into things like this when a lot more education are out there. So kudos on that. Cool. I think we're on top of the hour. First and foremost, thank you so much, Archie, for joining us. I must say, I have to hashtag fast forward Indonesia. I love that hashtag. And Archie, if someone wants to reach out to you, let's say a student that's listening to this podcast, want to learn more about Founder Shaper, that wants to learn more about PayFazz, where can they reach you?
I'm open on LinkedIn. Definitely feel free to add and ping me anytime.
Absolutely. Cool. And there you have it, guys. Thank you very much. And we have Archie Anugrah from PayFazz and Founder
Thank you,
Shaper.
everyone. Thanks for
Thank
the
you.
invite.